Hello and welcome to episode 187 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Off-Topic Podcast. I'm your host for today, Peter Triezenberg, and joining me today is an illustrious crew, starting with Marcos Gaspar.
Hello there.
Kyle Seeley.
Hey.
And Tyler Trosper.
Hello there.
And by our powers combined, we form a regular RPG fan dream team here to talk about a sequel to one of the greatest video games of all time, the much underappreciated, much maligned, actually a great game, Chrono Cross. Welcome to the Chrono Cross episode, ladies and gentlemen. Just to start things off, I wanted to ask everybody, just our brief thoughts on this game. Do we think it's underrated? Were we disappointed when it first came out? I don't know if any of us played it when it first came out. I know I didn't, but what do we think? I'm gonna start. I guess we'll just start from the top. Marcos, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I was actually fortunate to play this not right when it came out, but like a year afterwards. But I mean, personally, I really like this game, even if it didn't have like any connection to Chrono Trigger, like as its own game. Absolutely gorgeous graphically, musically, everything. I love it. Buy it.
Buy it. $6 on
Buy
PSN. You have no excuse.
It's free real estate.
Okay. Well, I guess that's thank you, Marcos. Kyle, what about you?
Well, I don't remember the exact year, but I know that this was a birthday present in my early teens, and I guess one thing that really stands out about this game in particular was, like, you know, back then each huge game was, oh, okay, this is going to be my game that I play this year, and I don't know, I just, this is one that you just remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Chrono Cross is a really unique game. Like, there's just a whole lot of stuff it does differently from other RPGs, and just a whole lot of that's just unique about it in general. Tyler, what do you think about Cross in brief?
Well, I actually played Cross before Trigger, so
okay,
I wasn't really shackled down by the aspect of like living up to the predecessor. So I mean, even now, I still really enjoy it. Like the music and the graphic style is still, I really enjoy it, and I even enjoyed it back then as well.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. See, that you start with the sequel. This actually reminds of a friend of mine. Chrono Cross is like his favorite game of all time, and he was the same way. He played Cross in a vacuum. Basically, he didn't know it was a sequel. He played it on his older brother's PlayStation, and it wasn't until we started hanging out I was like, "Oh, hey, you're like Chrono Cross, cool. What'd you think about it?" And that he found out Chrono Trigger was even a game. So I was like, "Okay, well, you have some homework to do, my boy."
Yeah.
As for me, though, similar boat as far as I'm concerned. Chrono Trigger is one of those RPGs that's like, it's iconic. But yeah, as for my money, Chrono Trigger is one of those games that's just like, it's so iconic and it's such a linchpin of the JRPG genre. It's like any follow-up was going to be under really high scrutiny just by virtue of having that name attached to it. And right away with Chrono Cross, there's a few names that are missing. Sakaguchi is credited as a producer, but as far as I know, he didn't really have a whole lot to do with this one. There's no Yuji Horii. No Akira Toriyama, Masato Kato, who was the lead writer on Chrono Trigger, and also worked on games like Xenogears. He's kind of the architect, if you will, of this game. It's got his kind of mark all over it. But for my money, playing it now, it's kind of almost the yang to Chrono Trigger's yin, if that makes sense. Like, it flips the original script on its head and explores some really interesting themes. It's got a whole lot. It takes some of the ideas that Trigger came up with and explores them further. It's an absolutely gorgeous game. I think we may have hinted at this game looks beautiful for the time. Still looks pretty now, honestly. Playing it on my Vita. But yeah, I'd think Cross is one of those games that may, when it first came out, it may have been kind of regarded for how different it was from Trigger, but I think now it's more important to think about what it did right more than it did what it did differently. But moving on. But moving on though, we can talk about Radical Dreamers real quick. Kyle, do you know? I think you know more about Radical Dreamers than I do.
So basically, from what I understand about the game, it was released on the Super Nintendo's Satellaview service, which was, as many know, downloadable content from the 90s. But I guess that format, from what I was reading, made it difficult to fully realize what Kato wanted to do. So that kind of led to it being rebooted as Cross. Anyone correct me if I'm wrong there. That's just what I ran into when I was doing some research.
No, as far as I know, you got it on the money. Sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
No, I was just going to say that sounds right. I actually don't know too much about it myself. I'm sorry.
Isn't it a text adventure?
Yeah, definitely. And that leads to a lot more character development, ironically, than... I mean, with Cross having like over 40 characters and Radical Dreamers having like 3, I mean, I guess it makes sense that it's going to be more, but the text itself, I just love the characters in that so much.
Yeah, absolutely. The protagonist of this game is Surge, who is another silent protagonist, like Chrono. But from what I understand, he has a lot more of a personality in Radical Dreamers, it's interesting how they made that transition.
Well, and I felt very much like 90s anime in terms of there was always the kind of average Joe protagonist that had a crush on the girl, and very relatable. And I feel like Cross, having come out several years later, definitely kind of took that and I guess shifted it towards more modern or contemporary conventions.
Right, makes sense. But a lot of elements from that, including Viper Manor, Kid, the character of Kid, a cut character from Radical Dreamers was turned out to be Magus, which was interesting.
Yeah, wasn't he like repurposed into Guile in Cross, or that might be a
kind of? He was Guile was intended to be Magus, but they ran out of. As far as I know, they ran out of time. Like they didn't they were gonna do that, but it ended up not panning out. So now Guile is just a mage who looks like Magus a bit.
As an aside, has anyone played through the DS port of Chrono Trigger?
I have. That was actually my first exposure to the game.
Didn't they try to link the character to Guile in the ending to that? I haven't played, but I read about it.
So they didn't really link it to Guile necessarily, but what they did do is they show a scene with this is getting into major endgame spoilers for Chrono Cross, by the way. They show a scene basically with the final boss of Cross and Magus, and you fight a new super boss at the end of Trigger, and then the new ending ties into the beginning of Cross with the poor military taking over the continent, basically. So it does kind of set things up, and I would want to talk about that on part 2 for sure, because there's some really interesting plot implications going on there. But moving away from text adventures and connections to its predecessor, Chrono Cross opens with a bang. It opens ad medias res with a little dungeon area. What do we think about the beginning, guys?
I was such a fool as a child that, like, because every time you would start a new game, a different party member would be just randomly selected into your party. So when I was a kid, I remember just restarting the game multiple times just to see who I would get.
I did that this time.
Same.
Okay.
I got Postual and then a Korcha.
Really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I got.
What about you guys?
I got Orla the first time I did it, in Fargo the second time.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, I can't remember who I got this time.
Cross has a lot of party members.
Yeah.
y'all.
It's so many.
See, I think that Vaughn was who I got the first time, but this time I believe I got Lena.
Oh, interesting. Okay. But the game starts at Medias Res with the raid on Fort Dragonia, and that whole scene is just a whole lot of foreshadowing. You really have no clue what's going on. It's just like why is one of my companions Scottish? Why am I stabbing her? Why is any of this? And then it cuts back to the very familiar sound of a bell ringing and Serge being awoken by his mother, which is a really sweet callback to Chrono Trigger. I appreciated that. And then we get to Arnie Village, the first town in the game, which, oh boy, this game's pretty, y'all.
So pretty. The colors are just so vivid.
Well, as far as the PlayStation 1 goes, I would rate it up there among even the top 3 in terms of how gorgeous, and that's just something I feel that with the pre-rendered backgrounds, that just kind of kept developing as an art through that console generation.
Yeah, I kind of miss pre-rendered backgrounds, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, I get why we moved past them, but man, did they do some cool stuff with them. And the whole game has this great, like, tropical vibe going on. Like, it's super mellow. And every screen is just so full of color and all this vivid imagery. It's square at the top of their game, absolutely. And actually, I want to jump ahead for a second too. Yasunori Mitsuda returns to do the soundtrack in this game, and this might be my favorite Mitsuda score ever.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
I mean, I keep it on my iPod, so.
Oh yeah, this is one. If there's one video game soundtrack you want to have like on your MP3 player at all times ready to go, put on the Cross soundtrack. It is so good. Does anyone have a favorite song? Go.
Probably the Homeworld map music. I really like it. It just really gets to the whole like tropical theme of the game.
You're gonna go with Homeworld. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Because Another World's probably my favorite. I
really?
love how peaceful that one is. I love that song. It's so pretty.
No, they're really good tracks. For me, I like the Star Ceiling Girl.
That's a good one. Mm-hmm. What about you, Kyle?
I don't know. It's tough. I would say that the Time of the Dream Watch from the opening attraction, not the FMV version, but where they show actual gameplay. I really enjoyed that one and how it merged the themes from Radical Dream, Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, that is cool. They kept some of the motifs. I do like hearing that familiar Chrono Trigger overworld music in the Homeworld song. That is really neat. Mm-hmm. But with that twangy guitar.
Wait. Are you talking about? You said the Homeworld overworld music?
Yeah, the Homeworld. I don't know what instrument it is.
I believe it sounds like a sitar to me.
Yeah. Okay. That would make sense.
Which
sounds very.
Yeah, like that even makes it even more like I don't want to say exotic. I don't like using that word. It gives it like an otherworldly feel to it, which is really great. Isn't that like the Homeworld theme, like an arrangement of another Chrono Trigger track? What was it? Yeah.
And it's on Memories of Green for sure from the Trigger soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Which I think is meant to.
I apologize.
What's that?
Oh, that's another interesting point, though, that the Homeworld and Another World did switch between arrangements of Cross and Trigger's themes, or Dreamers and Trigger's themes.
Yeah, which is interesting because it helps kind of ground. The Chrono Cross is about parallel worlds, not so much time travel like the first game, and I think it really helps to ground you in which dimension is like the original, quote unquote, and which one is the other world. And also how the two are connected across time and space, basically. This game gets into a lot of pretty heavy subject matter, so it's interesting that they explore that with the music so well.
Yeah.
Just aesthetics-wise, Chrono Cross is like 10 out of 10. This game looks beautiful.
Yeah, they do a really solid job. And I'll just inject this just a tiny bit. Like, if you're just paying attention to the music compared to which world you're in which town you're in, you'll notice that like something's a little bit more lively, like Termina in another world when it's just celebrating its whatever anniversary or whatever event.
Mhm.
It's a lot more lively than in Homeworld, where it's been taken over by the poor army. But it's really Goldove that really shows I guess the care of its music, because it's a lot more mellow in another world, but in Homeworld, where because Termina's been taken over, I'm assuming some of the patrons or just people are in Goldove, and it's a lot more lively. So it's like the liveliness travels from area to area, and I was like, that's really smart, really good.
It is neat, and because of the system in place, you get to kind of explore the dichotomy of each area, because you get to see different points and how your choices affect them. We'll touch on that a little later. For now, though, what I want to try and talk about is what do we think about the battle system? I know this is one of the more controversial parts of the game, and I want to get everyone else's opinions before I say mine. So, who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, yeah, hit me.
For the battle system, I personally like it because there's a lot of reward to it, and I'm speaking about specifically the different levels of strengths that you hit with and the accuracy. For like a low hit, there's 3 levels: low, medium, or hard. I'll just call it that. As you would guess, the harder you hit, the more likely it is to miss. But when you hit with a hard and it criticals, it's the most satisfying sound like I've ever heard, especially when it's Surge's Scythe. It's just like wham, blah, 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 blah. I was like, that is really dramatic for that weapon, but I like it.
It is very satisfying. And
I've ended a lot of boss fights just doing like 3 or 4 criticals with just Surge, just throw an eagle eye out there.
Dude, I ended a fight with Dash and Slash one time, and it was the most satisfying freaking like final blow ever.
Everything is so dramatic and choreographed in the fights. It's just like, man, this is great. The music, I know a lot of people don't like the music about the battle, in regards to the battle theme. I'm actually fine with it. It does sound a little goofy for it, but I mean, I'll give it. I mean, because it's the Chrono Trigger series, I'm like, you know what, the first game looked really goofy because it had that cutesy Akira animation to it. And this one, I like it that it keeps at least some goofiness. I'm pretty sure he did not intend for the battle theme to sound the way it does, at least.
Yeah, Gale is an earworm, if nothing else.
I wouldn't call it an earworm, but yeah, if you hear it for the first time, you're like, what is this music? It's not a battle theme.
What about you guys, Tyler or Kyle?
Well, I like it, but I guess now that I'm older, I'm starting to understand it a little bit better. You know, I think I still have some difficulties understanding certain aspects of it, as I've talked to you guys about before. But it's really kind of straightforward with its attacking system, because it's basically showing the percentage of how likely you're going to attack. So I like how straightforward that is. It's just really interesting when it gets into the elements and building the different affecting the field in order to improve your attacks, or doing the opposite to your enemies.
Yeah, right. It's a lot more complicated than Trigger, which used kind of the classic ATB system.
Exactly.
Once you start getting into, like, I heard someone describe it as Final Fantasy VIII, but it works.
Oh man! I never thought about that, but yeah,
it's a little mean to Final Fantasy VIII. But I mean, to be fair, you are doing a lot of stuff with not just like equipping different skills, but you're like, basically what you're doing in Chrono Cross is you're trying to you have different elemental skills that have accorded strengths and weaknesses. And then these skills are sectioned off into tiers that you build up to more powerful spells or elements, abilities, whatever, by landing basic attacks. And you can land as many basic attacks according to your character's stamina gauge. Once stamina runs out, your turn is over. So battle becomes kind of a give and take of managing stamina, building up your element grid, and hitting enemies with the right abilities, which you also have to keep in mind what kinds of elements you're using at the right time because they affect the properties of the battlefield, which makes certain elements stronger or weaker. It is a lot at first to keep track of, and they continuously keep introducing new elements. Like we even by the what we decided was our midway point of the game, they're still explaining to me what trap elements are, and it's like what is that?
Well, that's good though. When they do that because they I think with the treasure chest inside them inside the volcano I think is a trap inferno, and you can use that trap inferno in one of the boss battles inside the Fort Dragonia. And that's crazy because Inferno is a pretty high level fire element, and to have that early on is very valuable.
And the ability to run away from boss fights is really awesome in order to like oh, they use that element, I should go back in case I didn't equip it, and then equip that trap and then go back into the fight. I really like that.
Yeah, and this is why I'm kind of a little more forgiving on Chrono Cross, because even though the battle system seems a lot more complicated, and it is, there are also a lot of accessibility options, and that's something that Trigger also implemented. Like, you have things like you can dodge enemies on the field, you can run away from any battle, boss fights included, you can switching out your elements, switching out your party members is as easy as clicking a button. Like, it is very intuitive despite its complexity, and I think that's good. I think that's really clever. And if combat feels good, like Marcos said, landing a critical hit or dealing like a super powerful element attack feels really good. And you don't get that a lot in turn-based combat, where the combat is like not just like visually pleasing, but also tactile in a sense. If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense because like it's not so much turn-based because you can like hit someone a couple of times and just switch out to another character.
Yeah, right. Or they can if they attack in the middle of your chain, and if they attack another party member, you can continue your attack. But if they attack you, it's interrupted and you have to start over. So there's a bit of luck going on.
Yeah, that's in regards to the accuracies Peter's talking about. That if an enemy attacks you while you're attacking, you lose the accuracy boost you get while landing a hit. But if an enemy hits someone else, then you just go right back into whacking that character.
So it's interesting, and they throw you right into it with the first you get a first little mini dungeon where you get to interact with the environment, which kind of does show you what you can expect from this world's dungeons. Some environmental puzzles, and using the right elements to beat bosses. Very early on, Surge ends up waking up in the other world. He goes to a beach. To the beach with his friend and disappears. He's sucked into the wormhole or whatever. Once we get to another world, we get one of the more interesting plot hooks of this game, which is that in the other world, Surge is dead. Including a scene where you go to your own gravestone. That's kind of morbid.
And the impact of that is doubled if you have visited it in Homeworld, where you basically wrote Surge and Lena forever or something to that effect, and it's your grave in the other world.
That's really creepy too, especially. Well, it's also funny too because if you're like me and you didn't recruit Lena because kid all the way, it's like okay, fine, whatever.
Before we get too far away from the battle system, though, I do have a question.
Oh yeah.
Did anyone else set their percentages to automatically advance, or chose manual because I know like by default it's automatic. I find it's so much easier to do manual.
I didn't even know that was an option. I've been doing it the basic way.
That's an
Yeah.
option?
Oh yeah, I'm just curious because like say you want like several high efficiency attack like what were we saying they were the weak if you want to do like 6 weak attacks, you're going to be able to build up your meter so much faster. I really appreciate that simplicity there to just be able to hit the button quickly.
Yeah,
That's
I had to set the manual just for that reason because there are characters like say Nikki. He has a higher magic, so I'm not going to use him too much for attack, and I'll just do like 4 weak attacks in a row, just so I can build a gauge. Hit with a strong hit with someone else with a low hit, so it goes back to 7 for stamina.
Right.
Use magic, attack with someone else weak, drop them up to or put them up to 1, then use another magic to clear out fight fast.
Another question is the leveling system. Do we feel like does anyone else feel that the battling itself is the reward in this game? Because in my opinion, I feel like if you really get into the battles, they're enjoyable, but it prevents you from like just needlessly grinding forever.
It does cap your progress after a certain extent, yeah, because basically how it works is every major boss battle or story encounter gives you a star, and once you earn the star, you'll earn some minute stat boost as well as one large stat boost after a certain number of battles, and then after a while you'll stop gaining stats and you have to wait till the next boss encounter. Now there are some optional stars you can hunt down and if you do side quests and are thorough exploring, but for the most part you're kept on the critical path. That is interesting, and I'm not sure if I'm fond of it, but it also means the difficulty of the game is pretty finely tuned as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, definitely helps not to get like too burnt out on the battle system or have to grind too much. And I have noticed because I remember as a kid, a lot of like having a lot of difficulty, but now it's just everything seems like I'm at the right strength for most battles. So it definitely I think it preps you well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But your first major destination, once some kid joins your party, or not, if you can actually turn her down and go a completely different route, which is interesting. This game does that a few times. But is Termina, the central city, and from there, your goal is to infiltrate the manor of General Viper, who's like the lord of the El Nido Peninsula or whatever. And this is something Cross does that's really interesting, is that you have a lot of freedom in how you approach this dungeon. There's, as to my knowledge, there are 3 different paths you can take, and they all lead to different party members. Who all did we go with on this run?
I'm gonna say that the main reason I chose Guile this time was because of the Radical Dreamers reference. Because usually I kind of enjoy Nikki, but I don't know.
Yeah, I went with Nikki.
Having that black element character is really helpful as you don't get one for a while.
Yeah, I also went with Guile, even though I went with him originally back when I was a kid. I just really like his attacks, and I just like him as a character.
Yeah, for myself, I actually went with Nikki just because I wanted to see his interactions with certain characters later on in the game, like with Fargo or Marcy inside Fort Druk, the Viper Manor.
Yeah, right. I went with Nikki on this playthrough because I wanted to try. The first time I played the game, I did Guile because of the connection to Radical Dreamers, because he's like kind of a dummied out Magus, basically. Like they wanted to make him a character from Trigger, but didn't have time to finish it, as far as I understand.
That's what I've heard.
I went ahead and named him Magus for this playthrough.
Should name him not Magus. But but once you basically you pick that, and that can lead you in a completely different dungeon. Pierre will basically let you in through the front door, but he's kind of useless. Nikki, you'll go through a secret tunnel you'll hear about in in Termina, and then with Guile, you have to take the bluffs, which is interesting. But I like how it gives you the freedom to choose. And it also encourages, because Chrono Cross also brings back New Game Plus, it encourages you to experiment on replays.
Definitely, Chrono Cross isn't a game where you can just get all the characters in one playthrough. Which, oof.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to make choices, and sometimes they're very difficult. Like once you clear Viper Manor, Kid gets injured, and you have to choose like whether or not you want to help her or not. And it's like, and I'm being me. I'm like, oh no, we gotta help Kid. Like she's like the other protagonist. We gotta save her. Which leads to this whole bit where you go to Hydra Swamp and like do this whole thing. But then if you don't do it, not doing it is the only way to get Glenn, who is one of the best party members.
And arguably more story heavy than most of the others.
Yeah, he's really, really relevant to the game's events. He's a neat reference to Chrono Trigger. He gives you one of the few, because dual techs are a thing in Cross, but they aren't really as prevalent as they were in Trigger.
More of an Easter egg than anything.
Yeah,
you kind of just stumble upon them. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh no, no problem whatsoever. But yeah, like speaking of, we're jumping ahead a little bit. Once we get to Hydra, that choice point, if you do go with saving Kid, and you get Korcha in your party, Macha? No,
Korcha.
You're right.
It is Korcha. Nah, I'm getting confused.
Cha.
Cha.
Get confused with all these characters. The Hydra Swamp thing is interesting because that whole dungeon just shows how the worlds affect each other. Like, you end up basically wiping out an entire ecosystem in Homeworld because Hydras are already extinct in another world. So you have to go to the Homeworld to get the medicine for Kid, and in doing so, it sets off this whole quest chain that leads to like the dwarves that live in that area being like, hey, no, we hate all humans now, and going on and exterminating another race in Homeworld. It's they really do make the decisions feel like they have consequences, which is interesting especially for a game that came out in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a nice extension of the, I guess, more muted themes in Trigger that make you question, like, are humans actually worth saving?
Yeah, they call them like an aberration of evolution, which if you've played Chrono Trigger, that was a big thing with the Reptites, their theme.
Mm-hmm.
That if not for Lavos, things would have been very different. Which I think is interesting.
Yeah, and you also find this in another Square game, Radia Stories, where you have the options of siding with like either the humans or like the others, like elves and other like fairy creatures, and essentially which path you choose, you'll end up wiping out the other species.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty dark.
It's pretty heavy, even though the game feels like a comedy sitcom.
I did not expect something that dark from the character art.
I said, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I remember that. That was pretty dark for that game.
Oh, jeez. Great games. Chrono Cross.
But yeah, no kidding. It's a really thematically heavy game too. Once you do save Kid, I'm sorry if I'm moving through these plot points too fast, guys.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah,
but I'm trying to get us to the really juicy stuff.
All right.
If you don't mind, I will say as an aside, really quickly, while I was doing a little bit of research into this pre-playing, I actually found out you don't even have to save Kid ever. Like, once she leaves the party at this point, if you want to, you can like avoid her the rest of the game.
Yeah, no kidding.
Wow.
Yep. Cold-blooded.
You can basically wait forever. Like, basically the only time she'll meet up is so you get the astral amulet, but like even then, the fact that the game gives you so much freedom, it honestly kind of reminds me of like, in a lot of Western RPGs, you can do stuff. Even in older games like Morrowind, you could break the main quest chain. Cross never gets so far as to put you in a fail state, but it is impressive how much freedom they're still able to accommodate you, just in terms of how you progress through it. Once if you do either way, once you save, if you save kid or if you come back later on, you'll end up getting a Korcha's boat, and you'll be given, basically you'll get the chance to go off to the next dungeon in the game, the SS Invincible, or the ghost ship that shows up next to it, because you're trying to get to Fort Dragonia, the place that was seen at the beginning of the game. The ghost ship dungeon is interesting. That's another unique little motif I wasn't kind of expecting from my happy tropical JRPG. Those enemies are pretty creepy.
Something we saw a lot of in 90s PS1 games, though, I feel. Well, even later Super Nintendo ones had a lot of ghost ships.
Yeah, it is kind of a fantasy trope, isn't it?
Yeah, you see those a lot in like Tales games too.
Mm-hmm. If you're on Nicky's path, you get a nice little aside because the pirate ship captain is like his father. This is one thing about Cross that I like it, but at the same time I also because it's another thing that encourages you to replay the game, because some of the little character interactions you can miss out on if they're not in your party.
I almost feel like it would have been better to have like 12 really developed characters than 40 plus, where only a handful are really that relevant to the story, and it's mostly cookie cutter based on preference.
But then again, some of those optional party members are really fun, like the voodoo doll man you get at the beginning of the game.
Mojo.
Mojo is the best.
Mojo.
Yeah, I mean, I personally like the whole thing about like just choosing certain characters. Like I went with Kid, not Kid. The first time I played, I went with abandoning Kid in the beginning, and then like turning up at Termina, and that was kind of my party, but with Mojo and Pushel, and just the interaction. The kid walks up to you, it's like, I love what she said. It's like, you don't even know who you are, and you're walking a dog. This game has good writing.
It does. No, especially it has a good localization too. Like there isn't really a whole lot of English going on here.
Pushel was probably one of the most underappreciated characters I felt.
Very strong.
I like what's his face? The doctor who speaks very normally, except he occasionally puts in random bits of surfer slang.
Oh, Doc.
Yeah, Doc. He's like, I do not know what we can do about this conundrum. I guess we'd better hang 10 dudes.
Yes.
Well, actually, I believe that they had like a script set up so that regardless of which character you had, it would kind of like detect that and just adjust the speech patterns to match that character. Aside from, say, like Glenn or Nikki, where they had extra. And I feel like that was kind of an innovative solution for such a large cast.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah, it gave characters character even when they weren't saying anything too important.
Yeah, for sure. Did we all do the Ice Dragon quest on our way to Fort Dragonia? Or were you like me the first time and you ran through the lava screaming?
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, I did the ice quest, yeah.
I find it hard not to, just out of completion. I like to explore.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, did you bring Rasley with you on that quest? Because that's interesting. I had never done that before, and I was surprised at that she was a surprisingly solid party member.
Oh yeah, I brought her too, just because I remember that was where she's from. So she's
rough. The little fairy girl.
Yeah.
And you get like
prior. Sorry, I apologize.
No, you're fine. It's just funny because like funny, but like she gets like, that is a really dark story turn. If you bring her with you, she basically witnesses the genocide of her people, and it's all your fault.
Yep. Yes, it's true.
Because it's a direct
kind of lose.
Yeah, no kidding. Like this is the only way forward for you, but it ties into a larger theme of people acting recklessly and not considering the consequences of their decisions.
Also kind of sucks that, I mean, you also tell them that the Hydra, like, there were still like baby Hydras alive, and the dwarves are like, well, okay, I guess we're gonna go back to our swamp. Bye, guys. And it's like,
Yeah.
no repercussions.
Yeah, right. It's like, no, I want you guys.
I have a thought, and this might be something that gets cut out and saved for later because it gets heavy into spoiler for late in the game.
Go for it.
But I'm wondering, was it another world where the Hydras were wiped out? I thought.
It was in another world.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if fate is telling these people to act a certain way, like, wouldn't it be fate's fault that swamp is toxic and the ecosystem is ruined? Like, how is that better for people? I don't get that.
That's the thing, because we haven't talked about the records of fate, which is actually our save points that record the game. But in Artie's Village, we get an explanation that people go to the records of fate to more or less be told what to do. And that's a huge theme throughout the game, and especially the end game. But I guess that would be true if they did consult the records of fate. But let's just say that everyone did, just for the sake of this conversation. I would say, yeah, it's whatever the system behind the records of fate that did tell them to do that, which is pretty messed up.
Kind of a matter, I guess, of I have a grand plan, and whatever gets screwed along the way is just a casualty of war, I guess. I mean,
it's one of those, if you die in Chrono Cross, the game over screen is always, that's actually, it's stuck with me. It's where it tells you fate has no forgiveness for those that dare to stand against it, which is a literal reference to the fate system, but also an interesting allusion to the "in the end, the future refused to change" line from Chrono Trigger.
ooh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got from that.
In a lot of ways, and for Cross, a game that gives you a lot of freedom as a player to express yourself, it's funny how the story ultimately becomes about predestination and control and anomalies in the system that are affecting that perfect plan.
I hadn't thought of this until now, but that is a good mirror for Trigger because, I mean, when you really think about the first half of that game, it felt like you were making huge changes, jumping back and forth through time, but really, like, up until the halfway point, your party really does not change anything, and that, I feel, kind of mirrors what we have going on here.
Even in Trigger, all roads lead to Lavos, like one way or another. Like, and that ends up being a major plot point later in Cross, which I don't want to touch on just yet because it's like right after this halfway point we're on. But Cross does make the very point that, yeah, you saved the world, but at what cost?
Yeah, my bad on getting so far ahead, but this game is so complex. It's like,
You're fine. No, dude, this is one of the things about Cross. Why I think Cross is so underappreciated. It is thematically a very heavy game, especially coming after its predecessor. But it also sheds light on some of the heavier subject matter that Trigger did explore. Like for Trigger is a lighthearted JRPG romp, yes, but it also did have a lot of serious motifs that Cross is expanding upon. And once you get to that ending point, though, Fort Dragonia, we're back again. We're back at the beginning, and the game even shows you a little flashback of Kid getting stabbed before you walk in, just to remind you, hey, you think that you can change the future, huh? You think knowing what's going to happen is going to change anything?
it's a nice bookend, I feel, to what I suppose should be the first half of the game. It always felt like the first half, but I feel like there's actually so much more after this point. Maybe it's even like the quarter point of the game.
I would say that it's a third point, like from the beginning to Fort Dragonia, then playing as Lynx until you turn back to a human, and then the human back to the end of the game.
Yeah, kind of, actually.
I feel like the Lynx portion was so much meatier, but that may have more to do with the fact that the story just got so much more dense.
Oh no, it was definitely
Yeah.
meatier. It was good. It was the meat and bones of this game.
That is probably the largest chunk of the game. It is the whole second act, and A lot of the major dungeon crawling you're going to be doing is going to be as Lynx. Which isn't that kind of a cool moment where like the villain everyone's been like terrified of, like, and everyone's been warning you about. You go for the final confrontation, and all of a sudden he pulls some magic mumbo jumbo, and now you're fighting your own party, and you're stuck in the Catman's body.
That is an excellent bait and switch.
It's a pretty killer plot twist as far as gaining plot twist before, and then you play as the villain of the game for a good chunk of it. While he goes around in your body causing mayhem.
Very much what I'm looking forward to discussing next episode. Just the fact that to a player, it seems like you're the same person in a different skin, but to these virtual characters, these NPCs, you are the person they're afraid of.
Yeah, exactly. You lose access to all your party members, and you have to basically start again from scratch. But I mean, I think we've touched on a whole lot of the stuff in the first half of Chrono Cross. Do we have any closing thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Not that I can think of, other than I mean, you can get to this point in the game with 3 characters. You do not have to recruit anyone else. But I noticed, like, in the next half, we are going to get so many required characters. I don't know how relevant that is, but I think that's an interesting aside, just based on the fact that you lose access to the characters from the first half.
A lot of the NPCs you've been encountering are going to be, and basically anyone with a character portrait, probably important. You should talk to them.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pretty much like recruit all of Korch's family.
Korch's whole family, all of the Acacia Dragoons, General Viper and his people.
Mm-hmm.
A strange turnip.
A flower.
A talking mushroom man named Fun Guy.
Oh gosh.
A space alien.
Space.
A baby dragon.
Don't we also get an android at one point?
Yes.
Or use an assassin.
Cyborg, yeah.
You get not one but 2 wrestlers. But I think if we're talking about the different party members coming in, we should probably save a lot of this for the next episode of Chrono Cross. So as always, listeners, thank you all for listening to us ramble on about video games at length. Next week, we're going to have an episode about the Detective Pikachu movie. So look forward to that. I'm excited as of this recording. I'm really hyped for this movie. We'll see if I have the same enthusiasm once this recording hits, but I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. There's also going to be a friendly competition episode later in May that Solosi's been pushing for. So look forward to that. Just to give our social media real quick, Marcos, where can we reach you?
You can reach me on Twitter at rhythmroad.com, or if you want to email me on the music side of things, RPG Fan, you could email me at music@rpgfan.com.
All right. Tyler, you want to plug your social media?
Yeah, sure. The best place to probably get in contact with me is on Twitter. My handle is at Cosmos Chaos, which is Cosmos with a K.
And what about you, Kyle?
Well, in the event anyone wanted to send me anything, Kyle S at RPG Fan, but I don't have any social media or anything that is related.
All right, and for what it's worth, I have Fury on Twitter. You can also reach me, Peter T, at rpgfan.com. And this is going to conclude our first episode of Chrono Cross. We'll see you next time, dear listeners. Good night, and good luck. And remember, in the end, the future refused to change.